What's going on, cryptocurrency universe? It's the Bitcoin miner here, guys. Well, today I get to play with the new ASRock H110 Pro BTC Plus motherboard. I am going to build a rig with 13 graphics cards. You heard that right. 13 graphics cards, guys. Look at this. We're going to put 7 1080 Ti's in there. And I'm going to put 6 Radeon RX 580s in this build as well. This is going to be an epic build. It's going to be a lot of fun. And we're going to have a blast putting it together. And actually, guys, there's a contest going on. You've got about 8 days left to go ahead and sign up if you've missed it. It's a few videos back. I'll put a link down in the description where you have a chance to win one of these motherboards and a total of free Ethereum from me. Second prize is another motherboard, and then there's a couple other prizes which are apparel gear and whatnot. So anyhow, guys, make sure to go check out that down in the description and sign up for that contest. Win you one of these free boards, guys. All right, this is the beginning of the epic build, and I want to also send a shout out to CryptoMine. He helped me out with this the stand over here. I went ahead, I just didn't have time, too busy with work to build the new red box miner, unfortunately. So we're friends and we were talking back and forth, so he got me one of these over here real quickly. Of course, I paid for it for him, and I really appreciate him, you know, getting it out quick, getting it out the door for me so I can get this rig set up and done. I really wanted to build another red miner, just didn't have the time, unfortunately, but I do have a surprise box coming. There's going to be a whole nother build coming up here in a couple of weeks, maybe even a week. I might get it next week, but there's a surprise build coming. I'm going to do another 13 GPU build, but in a different case that I've also been working on and designing that should be out pretty soon. All right, well, guys, I'm going to start putting this together, and let's go. Alright, let's get to the meat of this, guys. I've already sat the motherboard, pretty standard. Open the motherboard, pull it out, and fasten your screws and your motherboard into whatever case, stand, or however you're deciding to hold it. I've posted some other videos that use just really simple hoses and little pieces of them. You just measure them and cut them as spacers, and you can screw it to wood, however you guys choose to mount your motherboard. Power supplies are screwed in, and the first thing we're going to want to do is put our processor in. So the first part we're going to do is go ahead and open up our processor box, pull it out, and we're going to want to pop this top off. Before we do anything, pop this top off. Don't touch those pins. Be very gentle and easy. And I like to put this in the motherboard box. So I'm going to go ahead and open this, and then let me open the processor. Okay, I'm just going to use a Celeron processor for this. We don't need too much. Not going to be any, use any GPU mining. Now, when you pick up a processor, you always want to pick it up from the sides. You can see there's little spaces for your fingers, so pick it up like so. Locate the triangle over here in the bottom left-hand corner. See that triangle right there? That triangle also lines up and matches with the triangle on your board. See how in the corner, that plastic right there, the triangle is missing? Right in here. And usually there's a little mark. It's right there. There's a mark on the metal. You can see the triangle. So the triangle goes into that corner. So I'm going to go ahead and seat my processor. Okay, now that I've got the processor seated, we're going to go ahead and slightly lower this, flat down, just like this. And then we're going to grab the bar, which is right here. Make sure it slides down in front of it. Press with medium pressure straight down. It's out, in, and under. There you go. That's all there is to it. Now we're going to go ahead, take the heat sink. We're just going to use the thermal paste that's on the heat sink today. what I like to do is undo the cable right there. Go ahead and get that loose, and then okay, so what I like to do is sit at an angle, get the 2 feet sat into place, lower evenly, and let it fall into place. Keep my finger on the center as for steady pressure. Push straight down till it snaps. Switch fingers. Well, I'm doing this left-handed and recording all at the same time. Push down till it snaps. Gonna do the same thing over here. And then one more on this side. Keeping steady pressure in the middle. And then once you get the final snap in, you can release your pressure in the middle. You don't want too much pressure, just even steady pressure. Okay, that's it. Oops, sorry, there was a bar in there. That's it, guys. Okay, the next step is to plug the fan in, and we're going to locate where it says CPU fan, which is right there. So we're going to plug this 4-prong into there. Make sure it's going the correct direction. There's a flap in the front, and that flap slides right into this. Okay, the next step is to install your RAM. Using DDR4. All this stuff will be listed in the description that we're using for this build, and all we're going to do is just, well, pop those 2 back over here, open them up. See this slot right here? You want to make sure this slot and that slot line up correctly when you're installing your RAM, and it will snap directly into place. Alright, we've got the RAM plugged in. Now the next step is we're going to go ahead and find a few of the power plugs, particularly the Molex, so that we can plug these in, and the power supply for the motherboard over here, because they might be a little difficult to get to here in a few minutes. Okay, now that we've got these cables plugged in, you want to use the CPU cable, and there's 2 4-pins that will plug in over here, and then your 2 Molex 4 pins over here on both sides. Alright, now the fun part. We get to open all 13 of these graphics cards. Well, I've already opened 2 of them for display purposes, as you guys can see, so I've got 11 more left to open. But basically, whatever stand you guys choose to use, you know, we've got your motherboard installed, your CPU, your RAM. Went ahead and got the basic power plugs installed. You know, just trying to think of stuff that might be in the way, and go ahead and start plugging those things in so they're easier to get to. I went ahead and got all of the risers installed earlier. Went ahead and screwed down with my handy screwdriver, guys. This thing is so awesome. I love it. Can't live without it. I will put a link down in the description where I got it on Amazon. That thing is awesome. I've used it. Anyways, so we got all these risers down. All of these already installed, ready to go. All I've got to do now is open up all the graphics cards, and we'll get to the meat of this. Alright guys, got all 7 of these bad boys unboxed. Now we're going to move on over to the next phase, which is going to be plugging in the power connectors, your SATAs, the Molexes for those 2, which we're going to use these right here. Not use the adapters. If you can avoid using the adapters, please do so. You have to, which, and what I mean are these adapters here. You know, if you have an extra Molex, go ahead and just plug it straight into the Molex instead of trying to use SATA to power them. It's much safer, much less risk of fire. And then we're going to go ahead and attach our cables and plug them into the board, get everything prepped, and then we're going to plug in the graphics cards. Okay, I just went ahead and plugged in 2 so you can see what I mean. Now when you're plugging in your SATAs, I like to not use more than 3 per cord. This one won't reach, they're further apart, but sometimes if you do a custom build, you can actually get up to 4. I don't like to overload it with 4. I like to go 3 max per cord, so keep that in mind. And different cords have different diameter cables here. So there have been hazards in the past of these catching fire, although the newer ones are much safer, but just Try not to overload them, especially if you notice you have really cheap cables or they're really thin. Maybe just one per cable, or two per cable. Basically just try to keep these things in mind and play it safe. We went ahead and plugged these in down here. Now I'm going to continue to plug in everything else, and we'll be ready to put the cards in. I went ahead and grabbed the motherboard cable as well, because I'm going to plug the motherboard cable in right there as well. Alright guys, now that we've got our base wiring complete, I want to make sure everything is plugged in very nice, fully plugged in, fully seated. USB wires and your SATA and your Molex. Now we're going to walk around to the other side of this build, and we've got all these guys plugged in over here. They're pretty close together, and they're even touching actually the prongs. Don't think it's an issue. Otherwise they probably wouldn't have put them so close together if it was. But we may need spacers of some sort, maybe little pieces of plastic slivers, but we will see. We will test it as is and go with it. Alright, we are ready to go ahead and install our first graphics card into this bad boy. Well, actually, let's go ahead and plug in some of these power cables. And I'll show you. Oh, and while we're talking about power cables and plugging them in for the next phase, there's going to be a lot of power coming out of these bad boys. These are 1600 watt power supplies, and I know for a fact, depending on what algorithm you're running, like the Lbry or Zcash only 1600 T2 can only run 5 of these bad boys, only 5. But the other 1600 should be able to run the other Ethereum 6 cards and 2 cards running Zcash. So that's how I'm going to do. I'm going to run the 6 off of this, plus the 2 over here off of the other power supply, and then the 5. So that way, maximum draw ratio, which is going to be something for Zcash or something very demanding, I'm going to be safe. Should have plenty of wattages, plus we'll undervolt them, and we'll go from there. Alright guys, let me go ahead and get everything plugged in. Okay guys, almost got everything all plugged in. I just wanted to make sure to remind you all of these parts will be in the description, but you will need what's known as a splitter. This is a 2-way GPU splitter, so that way you can run 2 GPUs. So you would plug the second one into here, the other motherboard plug, so they both turn on at the same time. Now I'm going to go ahead and plug in all of my VGA cables and just have them laying out, and then the next step would be to cable manage a little bit and plug in the graphics cards. Alright guys, I've got all the power cables plugged in, the other motherboard cable, the splitter, and I am finally ready to put these bad boys in. That looks so good. 7 of those bad boys side by side. Alright, I ran into a little bit of a bump in the road with the frame, just trying to line things up, trying to make sure everything fits right. Had to adjust a few little things, no big deal, but I got it all lined up now. Everything fits just right, and we got it. Takes a little tweaking, but we got it there. Alright, we got these bad boys in. Now the next stage is to go ahead and we're going to go screw them down here, and then plug in the power cables. Okay, I've got all these bad boys screwed in, ready to rock and roll, and I've got them all powered up and ready to rock and roll. When you guys are ordering your stuff, make sure to think about what plugs they have. You may need some adapters or an extra, I actually have extra plugs sitting around, extra cables from older power supplies. So, but you will probably need some adapters depending on what power supplies you use. If it uses one 6-pin, especially if it uses one 8-pin and one 6-pin. But be aware of that when you guys are looking at cards and ordering. I went ahead, I'm going to run 4 of the 1080 Ti's and then 2 of the 580s on top on this power supply, and this power supply is only running that and then the rail to the board. This power supply is going to run 3 and 3 1080 Ti's and 3 580s is what I'm going to run into it. So I'm trying to spread the power out so it's pretty evenly used, but this build is definitely going to max out those 1600 watts. So keep that stuff in mind, guys. Be very cautious of power, especially when you're doing something very large and something like this and plugging it in, and where and how you plug it in, how much amperage you have. You may even want to use 2 different sockets or 2 different plugs entirely, but we'll get to that when I start plugging this bad boy in. Alright guys, I've got all the other cards unpacked, got the second row in place, ready to go. Had to make a little bit of fine tweakings to make sure everything fits just right, and now all I've got to do is install them. I got a little bit too excited. We still got to plug in the USB and the cables up top first. Let me go ahead and knock that out. Alright, I finally got everything wired, and now I'm ready to put the graphics cards in, finally. But one thing I want to point out to you guys is you may want to get one extra long USB, or consider the lengths of your USB when you are building your 13 GPU rig. This one just barely fits. It's much tighter than I would prefer. I'm gonna have to go to Amazon and probably order me a longer cable, 3 foot or just something a little bit longer, to make sure that doesn't get stressed, but it should work for now. So let's continue. Alright, we got all 13 of these bad boys mounted. It's time to plug in those last 6. Alright guys, it's all put together. I'm trying to double, triple check everything. This bad boy is ready to roar. I can't wait to get it started. Fortunately, I've been here all day working on putting this thing together, and I don't have much time left, but let's see how much I can get up and going. All I got to do now is plug in the USB, the SSD. And for you guys who are new, oh man, I wish I had a flashlight, but your SSD plug will plug into right there. So we're going to take this cable right here, plug it in right here. Okay, just like this, guys. Get your SATA plugged in. I'm going to go ahead and stuff this in there. I need some serious cable management, but for now I think we're ready to actually plug this bad boy in. So I'm going to use Windows, and I'm going to put down in the description, guys, a link to where you can go and make a flash drive so you can actually load your own Windows. It's actually straight off of Windows website. I'll give you the link. It's kind of like a boot file / startup file. That way you can load Windows straight from a flash drive to the SSD, and I'll give you guys that link down there. And then there's also a link where you guys can buy a license for, I think it's $25, $27. That way you guys can pick up a license. It's really cheap. You don't have to worry about it not being legit and whatnot. I'll put those links down at the bottom. I'm going to go ahead and run a couple of power cords. I have to turn off the red miner over here. I only got 20 amps in the garage. I'm going to use one plug on 20 amps. I'm going to pull another 20 amps from inside on another plug. So I'm going to run a short extension cord. Extension cords, guys, are not a good idea. They're okay for short periods of time, but do not run them for long periods of time. I'm going to just run one for testing and get everything up and running. So let me go ahead and start running the cords, set up everything, and we'll pick it up from there. Alright guys, I got everything hooked up. I should be good to go. Let's see, I know I'm forgetting something, but let's go ahead and turn, I think the power supplies are on. We got everything plugged in. Still got the red miner on, but it's okay because I'm not really mining with this yet. We got a cool little power supply button over, or power and restart button over here. I want to try restart and power on. Well, power on didn't work, so that must mean I need to turn the power supplies on. Diggity dog. We got lights, camera, action. Oh yeah. Okay, this is a good sign. We got all our fans moving. We got stuff moving on the screen. The only thing we'll probably see is the BIOS, if anything. There we go. Oh, don't have a boot slice device. Okay. I guess we need that in order to get the BIOS going. Alright, so what I need to do is go ahead and start loading Windows and start all the tedious part, but we've actually got this bad boy up and running. I'm going to go ahead and stop the video now. This is the build, guys. I really appreciate you guys checking it out. Make sure to give me a thumbs up if you liked it. If you don't like it, give me a thumbs down. What can I do? All I can do is try to do better. But, you know, and if you haven't subscribed, please consider subscribing to the channel. And the next part, I'm going to go ahead and load Windows and actually see what this thing can produce. Talk to you guys later on. Bye, guys.